Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. This week, we're diving into an essential oil that you may not have used before, but that seems to be the trend as we get into these later episodes. This week, we're looking at Linden Blossom. How are you today, Liz?
Do you know, I've had a lovely week thinking about Linden Blossom. I'm quite floaty and dreamy today.
That very much describes this essential oil. Now, I did want to clarify, first of all, sometimes there can be a bit of confusion between the words linden and lime seem to get mixed up. Do you notice that as well?
Oh yeah, it's because in England we call linden trees lime trees.
But they don't actually produce the fruit, I'm guessing, in England, no?
No.
No.
So well, okay, so let's start there because lime trees, as I would call them, or linden trees. If you live in the Lindens in the UK, it's usually a street that's very elegant. It's quite
Mm.
affluent area, and it's quite it's a bit like it's a posh postcode street name, really. And when I was a little girl, we moved into like what I would call my childhood home when I was 4. So I was born in a different town, then I moved to Wolverhampton when I was 4. And our street was lined with lime trees, linden trees, and it was very, very elegant. And what we would call, I don't think it even exists now, but we still say it, the leafy suburbs. We lived in the leafy suburbs because of these beautiful, almost like lollipop deciduous trees, and they grow enormous. It's really not very practical to have them in a street. But and then we'd lived there about, I don't know, I suppose I was about 12, so maybe 8 to 10 years. Yeah, about 8 years. And the council sent us a letter and said we're chopping all of those trees down. And
Oh.
yeah, and I have a really, really strong childhood memory of, and I always think about this when I'm doing like priestess work, of my mom and all of the other moms in the street crying as these trees were felled. They were just desperate. And I can remember my mom, as a witch, obviously saying, this is a terrible thing that you've done. All of the insects, all of the birds, and she was really very angry. She was really shouting at the council, these poor council workers. But what's interesting is I do not remember them having a smell. And so the linden blossom, when I was a little girl, I feel very sure did not have a smell. But then skip forward many years to, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. I was lucky enough to go to Bulgaria to the Rose Festival, and before we went down into the Rose Valley, we went to a beautiful town called Plovdiv. And interesting, Plovdiv is in the news quite a lot if you're interested in archaeology and ancient stuff, because they've just found a beautiful old Thracian tomb. But it's a Roman city, really beautiful, full of like fountains and lovely statues, really gorgeous place. And I have never smelt anything like it. The linden trees were suffocating because it was so hot. And so that had really effused the smell of the blossom into the air. And I don't breathe very easily. Things like lilac, I'm very allergic to lilac. I was quite made nervous by it because I was like, this beautiful smell, very narcotic, very dreamy, made you feel like it was very otherworldly. I thought, I'm going to stop being able to breathe soon. So I was quite glad when the next day the temperature and the humidity came down and suddenly the smell was gone. But what's interesting is since COVID, and in this country, we've started to get much, much higher temperatures. You can smell them here. And there's one when we go out of the door. And for ages, I was like, I can smell linden trees. And my husband has a terrible sense of smelling. He's like, whatever, I can't smell them. And I go around going, where is it? Where is it? And last week I was able to actually find one. And it was a good 500 meters from our house off the way. And clearly the scent had been bringing it that far to our house, just off one tree. I haven't discovered another one. So it's a tremendous thing. So yeah, so these linden trees are huge, great big deciduous things that go into like a very, very pretty blossom white bottom with very big uh, stamens, which the insects absolutely love. And one of the things I think probably led to them being cut down when I was a little girl, I often see people say, "Oh, you never see insects on the windscreens of cars anymore. We used to have them all the time." And I thought, yeah, I wonder why that is. And when I was thinking about it, I thought, I wonder if it was because they cut all the linden trees down, because they get these little beetles on them that cause a sap that leaves this sticky residue all over cars, and then the insects stick to those. So potentially that may have been one of the reasons that they were like, "I've had enough of this. I've come to wash my car too much." It's what council workers were like in the 70s in this country. And so, yeah, perhaps that lack of residue, again, where people park their cars, there are definitely less pollinators than there were when I was a little girl, but perhaps that's not why they're not sticking to the windscreens anymore. Yeah.
Interesting. So from these ground trees, it is from the blossom that we get this beautiful, delicate essential oil. It does have such a sweet, kind of delicate aroma, doesn't it?
Yeah, but and in the bottle, yes, it does, but in real life, no, it's intoxicating. It's thick. The air gets really, really thick. But yeah, in the bottle when you're using it, I kind of think it's a bit like, I think it smells more like honey than Honey Absolute does. And I wonder if it's because of the richness of nectar, because it is a really thick with nectar. And interesting, I mean, that's another thing that perhaps led to all this, like cutting them down, that ever since antiquity, there's been a doubt or a worry that linden trees kill bees. And it's true, you will often find many dead bees under a linden tree, particularly bumblebees. You do have bumblebees in Australia, don't you? As well as honeybees. You have blue ones sometimes, I've seen.
I think so, yes. Yes.
So bumblebees are little and furry and woolly, and they don't sting. And so, particularly in this country, there's this real outpouring of love for bees. And so there's bees on absolutely everything, and most of them are like woolly bumblebees. So you're going to have all really big ones, little ones, and so Bombus terrestris is quite a small one, and it particularly goes onto the linden tree, and then underneath loads and loads of dead bees. So, as I say, right from antiquity, I think it was Pliny that wrote it, they'd said that Tilia species, which is the linden tree, kill bees. And we still don't know if that's true, but it doesn't seem to be. What they think happens is at times where the temperatures don't go up high enough, or there's been too much rainfall or what have you, for whatever reason, in their season, because they're so rich with nectar, bees flock to it. But if for some reason it doesn't make enough nectar for some, like in 1 year, then everybody's starving because they can't. They're reliant upon Bombus terrestris in particular. This is one of its main areas to feed, and so if there is no food, then they starve, and they starve going, "I need to find some of this tree." And these trees are massive, so they can search for ages, and then they just die there. So yeah, so it's interesting that the fact that it does smell so much like honey to me, and when you open a hive, it smells just like that. So I think potentially it's the smell of the nectar that you can smell in the essential oil. Yeah.
I was recalling actually after you started speaking that when I had popped it in the diffuser, although in the bottle it's quite subtle, it's once it's unleashed, then it can you need a few less drops than you would with most essential oils, because it can fill the space and dominate the aroma of the area.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm not a diffuser girl, but I can see how that's probably extremely true. I think heat is definitely a thing with it. Yeah.
Now, obviously, with flowers, they're beautiful to diffuse in the home, especially around spring or whenever you need a bit of a lift. But how are you using it on a physical level?
Well, your answer to that is I don't really. I've had this bottle forever, and it is one of my favourite scents. But when I started it, I thought, I better look and see if this does have some properties. And in actual fact, it has loads of properties that have completely passed me me buy. So for on the bookcases beside me, I don't know if you can see the bookcases. There are about six rows that are just herbalism books, and every one of those has got something on Linden. Go to an aromatherapy book, hardly anything in anyone. Um, so the reason that how it's used in herbalism is they make a tea, and you can make a tincture as well, but the tea in particular, and it's very popular in medieval medicines for coughs and for colds, and particularly if you've had a cough and it's made you hoarse afterwards. And they say make a tea, drink it daily, or particularly you can drink it cold daily. And what was funny was I'd said it was Darryl said to me, "What are you doing today?" And I said, "I was doing Linden Blossom." And he went, "Oh, that tea?" And I said, "How do you know tea? I've never, ever seen it in this country at all." He said, "Oh, a lot. We have it a lot in Menorca." So that's interesting how they go in different spaces. But yeah, so that the tea is very useful for colds because it brings heat. Interestingly, we have this relationship with heat again. And so for some, if you want to sweat for some reason, I can never quite get in my head why anybody would want to sweat. But of course, if you're trying to get a cold out or flu or any kind of sort of respiratory problem or infection, the whole point of macrophages is that they heat the body up and they make you sweat and they overcome an infection. Linden does that. So it will heat the body and it will make you sweat, and it will really affect fevers. So it will make you hot, but if you already have a fever, it will make you cooler, apparently. And the other reason for using it is stomachic. So any kind of digestive problems, but particularly nervous digestive problems. So things like IBS and stuff like that. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. But what's really interesting is suddenly, if you go into the clinical bases and databases, and clearly as authors, the aromatherapy authors haven't really caught up with this yet, but suddenly there's this huge outpouring of research into Linden Blossom because they've proved that it improves the diversity of the microbiome.
Wow.
So, yeah, so big, huh? So I don't know enough to be able to say that the essential oil would do it. It's the tea that the research is into. But yeah, so it increases the diversity of how many different species of bacteria are in the body, and it's another one of those, isn't it? Why would you want to increase bacteria? But I think we understand why we want to now. But also that it increases the number of the ones that are there, so it strengthens the microbiome. And so we can also see we know enough about the microbiome now to understand, okay, that has an effect on immunity. Interestingly, I wonder if that's what's happening with the coughs and colds, that the body is working from that. So very interesting. I would say the only author that I found that really had focused a lot on Linden Blossom is Valerie Ann Woolward, and she's written a lot in The Fragrant Minds, in The Fragrant Heavens, and never looked at Bruce Bukowski in Spiritual Phytoessencing, but I'd be very surprised if he hadn't written it. But I was convinced enough by what Valerie had said to go, yeah, I agree with that. In that its power is in its effects on the nervous system. So that it's very nervy, that it's very, like I said, it's quite euphoric. So it kind of feels more joyful. It's got this feeling of levity. What's interesting is when I kind of think about it in Plovdiv, they're all planted around a Roman temple. So I wonder if, if the spirits of place, if you like, when you go to a place and you feel very different, is always affected by the environment that's around you. And I wonder how, whether they were there back in the day and they were part of the reason that you went, you felt, oh, I feel close to the gods, because it does have that feeling. And Mummy used to use it a lot in like beauty creams and stuff like that for body lotions. And I can remember designing one called Titania. that was we sold at Midsummer. So you have that kind of fairy, joyful nature. But Ward talks about how it instills confidence, how it instills joy, how she uses it for nervousness, anxiety, melancholy, all of those things, that kind of beautiful lifting sense. And yeah, as I say, when I went to Bulgaria, I walked straight into that wall and felt it immediately. So it's interesting how it's rare that you kind of walk into it in those kind of situations. The only other kind of environment I can think of where you walk into an essential oil is when you go into a forest, perhaps, isn't it? But or a lavender field, I suppose. But yes, absolutely beautiful. So good for just generally. I just don't feel myself. I just feel a bit low. Right, Linden blossom.
And we write in our book, Gifts of Essential Oils, about how it's really good for people that maybe, especially younger people, that are feeling a bit timid or haven't stepped into their own power or claimed who they are, that this is a really great one. And almost as we've been talking before, I was kind of thinking, it's subtle in the bottle. It's kind of like the genie in the bottle. It's not until you release it that the power comes out. And it's almost as though it does have that blossoming to help people to, when the heat is on and it's time to shine, out comes Linden and out you come as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a bit like a drug. That feeling, because that sort of sense of euphoria, it does make you feel like you're not yourself. I don't know what overtook me. Somebody else came through like that. It's got that nature about it, definitely. What I also, when you look at the sort of occult botany books, and people like Culpeper, they classify it under the moon. But when they're describing it, it's as if they're, and particularly Warwood, when she's describing it, it's almost as if they're describing the archetype of Cancer. That it's a very nurturing oil, a very mothering oil. You've got that sort of sunny disposition that immediately can twist, and the moon comes in and it's the dark side of the moon. Where did that come from? But also just the way that it's like the flow of emotions, not necessarily that they settle and I'm happy. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to let go with the flow, very sort of as if they're in the crab in the waves, getting jostled about by the waves. So yeah, very, very nice to read. Something that I haven't really thought about for many, many years, really.
Yeah, I think this is a beautiful oil to bring back something that we are kind of lacking in this day and age. And that's kindness. I think it really lights up the heart to be really kind-hearted and to not underestimate, just like you shouldn't underestimate the oil in the bottle, that a simple smile, a kind gesture, helping someone out can have massive effect on your life, but more so their life as well. And I think this is a great oil to kind of bring you back to that. I think it's a great oil to help us think about charity and not just being so self-serving, and how we can help other people as well. So really nice from that generosity, kindness, charity, chivalry, all those type of things. It's a really beautiful heart opener. Although I haven't seen any references referring it to this goddess, it really has a kind of a Kuan Yin kind of energy about it. It's a bit zen and gentle. And I think we've said this before, but any oil like Manada that we say is gentle doesn't mean weakness. Gentleness or softness is a different type of power. And I think that's what Linden brings in, this kind of graceful, pleasant, kind, considerate energy. Would you agree?
Absolutely agree. And I love the idea of Kuan Yin. Paracelsus in Doctrine of Signatures has a specific section about oils that are rich in nectar, which, as I say, this one is, but potentially has times when it is not, which is interesting. But he talks about, and funnily enough, he uses lemon balm as his sort of anchor for this reference, given the bee connotation both times. But he says that the plants are rich in nectar, are heart-opening oils. That they not only open the heart chakra but connect with the heart of the world. And that's just a different way of saying what you said, really. It's lovely.
And what you were saying about Cancer and the moon, very much that kind of motherly kind of energy. But also, again, Cancer can be, they're squishy on the inside, but they can be a little bit hard and powerful with those nipper claws. So just like a mother who's cubs are, and oops, sorry, kick the camera. Mother who is, under her cubs are under threat. Linden kind of can bring you that power to step out of being timid and really do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm a Cancer. I'm a Cancerian, although more Aries rising. But don't forget that Cancerians are cardinal signs. They're the change makers. They're the ones that are really the go getters. So whilst they seem so, I always say to people, when you go for an interview and they have these stupid questions that they ask you, and they're just like, "Oh, what kind of animal would you be?" or whatever. So what's popular here is, well, if we spoke to one of your ex-colleagues, what would they say about you? Well, I know what mine said. They always used to say, "This is lovely till you get to know her." And there's that element of, "Oh, she's lovely, but do not cross her." And it's the same as you say. So yeah, it would be interesting to see that. But and the fact that you say that Cancerians go into their shell and they shut down. So why does the Linden blossom suddenly go, "No more Mecta"? Why does she? It's very interesting, isn't it?
Well, I'm kind of thinking now of the analogy of a mother who's give until she can give no more, and she's like, I'm straight out. So maybe Linden teaches that sometimes we need to step back and build up our reserves instead of just giving all the time.
Well, so one of the analogies that Warwood uses is, she says that guests are, so for anybody who hasn't read her books, she writes them as the personification of the plant. So if this oil were a person, what would that person be like? And she says that guests are always welcome in Linden Blossom's house. There's always food available for them, but do not try. She won't put you before her family. And I thought, oh, how funny, So that is really a very good description of me. You're welcome, but I'm sorry, family comes first. That's what I say about the Cancerian personification.
Now, I haven't seen any references, as I said before, about Kuan Yin, but I have seen references linking it to the Norse goddesses of Freya and Frigga, which are goddesses of love. So I think this would also be a beautiful one that you might want to use in love blends, romance blends, and that euphoric kind of energy could be advantageous in that way, just to help us feel a bit maybe more confident in love.
Well, I don't know much about Freya and Frigg, so can you tell me a bit more about them?
To be honest, I don't know much about them myself. Norse mythology is not one that really sings to my heart, so I haven't dived into it that much, but I do, from my understanding, and there may be people listening to this cringing as I get it wrong, but they are kind of some of the top gods. Freya, she's a goddess of love, but also a goddess of war. So she is very kind of bold. I believe she rides across the sky in a golden chariot pulled by cats. Sounds like a good way to travel. So she's kind of that real, if you think about what we've been saying about Linden, that kind of Freya energy does kind of really kick in. Frigga, to be honest, I don't know a lot about her. I haven't really dived into her or connected with her, but I can see how, as we're talking, and the limited knowledge I have with Freya, that kind of loving yet powerful, intoxicating kind of energy would really work with her.
Are either of them personifications of the moon?
Freya, I believe, is more connected to the sun. We'd have to check on Frigga. Yeah, a little bit.
Interesting. Well, for sure, the sun has a bearing on it. The heat of the sun definitely has a bearing. But you're absolutely right about the love element. But I think it would be more romance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And rather than like your day-to-day love or your passionate love, or like it is like aphrodisiac, but rather not so much sexy, if you like, lusty, that's the word I'm looking for, not lusty. It's kind of dreamy and romantic and nostalgic and whimsical, and I've said before, I'm doing a writing a meditation for midwinter. about nymphs, and we're using different essential oils in there. And I kept thinking, I really want to use Linden Blossom now that I've started researching it. But we're using the oils of a lady called Frances Bartlett, who's actually going to be doing one of our videos with us in the next couple of weeks. So we're using ones that she's distilled, and she does not distill Linden Blossom. But I just think that idea of that spirit of place, and the feeling of how it feels to like land at a place, that has a lot to do with how nymphs were generated in people's minds. And I do think that Linden Blossom is definitely one of those things that take you to a sense of place. So if you were looking to like invoke some kind of romantic environment, I don't know, picnics or what have you, then yeah, that would be definitely a way to use it.
With someone maybe with a limited experience of essential oils, would you probably say jasmine would be a close example?
Yeah, or your ylang ylang is quite heady and intoxicating as well. But yeah, I would say jasmine is probably your closest smell. I can't think of another one. Maybe clary sage in a way, but I can't think of anything that smells like it really. It certainly doesn't smell like lime.
No, definitely not. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So astrologically, would you attribute it to the moon?
And Cancer, yeah.
And Cancer, yeah. Because of its euphoric kind of energy, could it possibly associate with something like Neptune, do you think?
Oh yeah, and even Venus. But yeah. Oh no. Two thoughts crossed my mind then, and were they connected? No, I've been writing about fig, and immediately went, don't forget about deception, but I think that fig is more deception. So let me think. Is it, Neptune is dreams, but it is to see, illusion. Yeah, I think that would fit. In terms of medical astrology, no, it wouldn't really fit medical astrology, but I don't think it matters. It certainly fits Venus for the heart.
Yes, yeah. So heart chakra oil?
Yeah, or third eye, or crown. You can't say Kuan Yin and not say crown.
Yeah, very true indeed, yeah. And the question I've loved been asking you over the last few weeks, is this an oil that everyone needs?
No.
No,
for sure. I mean, it's always personal choice, isn't it? But I can't see that it has any particular use that there isn't an oil in your normal box that wouldn't have. But if you wanted to do something, if you were like creating something beautiful for a wedding, for example, you wanted to diffuse it for a wedding or something like that, it would be quite cheap to do. Incidentally, it's an absolute, not an essential oil, but you would only, like, as you say, only use like one drop, and it would just fill the space, and it would remain in the space all day. So it depends what you want to use it for, but medicinally, no, I don't think so. If you are somebody who is melancholy and feels anxious and gets sick to the back teeth of the smell of lavender, be an interesting way to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm guessing you would say the same for an aromatherapist. It's not going to have any special kind of superpower that, no, yeah.
No, but I shall be seeking down Linden tea to do my microbiome, and it was too big a piece of work. But I think I am going to really start thinking about, well, can you use this absolute? Which constituents are doing the job? Whether we know that information, and do they pass through distillation, and do they pass through the skin, or do you have to imbibe them by mouth? All of those questions are big questions to be answered in my head, and they take time. But I will be doing that work.
Yeah, fascinating. Oh, we might have to do a Linden part 2, things we just realised after the date.
Well, funny you say that. I was thinking, it would be something that I would really enjoy doing if anybody wanted to join us to have an evening where we journey together with Linden Blossom. I think that would be really interesting exploration to do.
When in the year did you say it blossomed? Was it a springtime blossom?
No. So wait a minute. Summertime. So funny. So astrologically, remind me, because you know how some pieces of information never stick in your head?
Yeah.
Sigils, astrological sigils, do not stick in mine. So the symbol that is like that, like an H, what does that mean?
Oh, that would be Pisces.
Right. So in Paul Sadia says, oh, and what about the arrow with the line across? What's that? Aquarius?
Sagittarius. Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. It says the flower is signed by Sagittarius. Ruling planet is the moon. Linden possesses Beckett, diaphoretic, febrifugal, and nervine properties. Infusions of Linden should be made when the moon is in, what did you say? In Pisces.
In Pisces, yeah.
Yeah. And I smelt it just a couple of weeks ago, but the temperatures are odd. But I would say July, August in the UK, but I think probably June, maybe in the Mediterranean areas.
Yeah, so it's the summer. It almost captures that energy of those warm, relaxed summer holiday kind of nights. Would you agree?
Yeah, kind of just drunk on life. Drunk on life, summer holidays, yeah.
Yeah, and not worrying too much about the mundanity of things. So it's almost like a
Oh
bit
God,
of
it's
an escape.
definitely not a thing for deadlines. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I say, quite often I don't even need to open the bottle to be influenced by an oil. It's simply moving my resonance into it. So I haven't checked what the safety is. I haven't done half of the research I would normally have done. It's just the plants going, yeah, okay, it's just what it is, you know.
Maybe that is, and it's quite interesting because I was talking to you just before we started recording about how I'm about to go traveling for a month. There's so much to do. I've become the worst type of human being that I despise in this earth. 3 hours before a birthday party, I've actually cancelled. So after we finish recording today, I'm having a quiet one. But it feels like almost it's quite funny that we're talking about Linden now, because Linden is like, sometimes we just need to forget it all and just bliss out and let go of our responsibilities and stuff, checking the safety, and just have fun, just relax, just chill.
Exactly. Just sometimes you just need a reminder that life actually is for living. It's not about a deadline. And there are some people in life, like me, for example, that has to be reinforced. And you're like it as well. Has to be reinforced over and over and over again to kind of go and just stop. And people don't actually have any influence whatsoever on saying that to me, but plants do have a way of just going, oh, look at that, we've done it, we can go away now.
I must say, being involved in this podcast is getting really, really dangerous, because every week we talk about an essential oil, and as we get into these rarer ones that I rarely use, I'm like, now I really need that. I almost need to.
Yeah. So I'll give away a couple of secrets. So one of the ladies we should say that Adam is going away for a couple of weeks, 4 weeks. And so we did think about having a break, but I've decided, no, I will invite some of my friends and we'll just carry on and just see if we even miss him. So, and we're going to have a lady called Candice Covington amongst other people. And Candice messaged me this morning. I think I'll talk about elderflower absolute because it really reminds me of you. And I'm like, wait, what? What is it about elderflower absolute? I'm going home to go and order some right now. It's doing the essential oils industry a power of good here.
Very much so. So yes, I will be away for about 6 weeks. I'll be back in October, but Liz is going to carry on with lots of different guests. And I'm worried about this because obviously when we go traveling, it's expensive anyway. Then I'm going to be listening to your episodes each week about some really interesting oils that you've got lined up. And I'm going to be online shopping each week. And so when I get home, there's going to be little parcels here of elderflower absolute and other ones that I haven't heard of before.
So that's already on the list, is it?
It is. I'm fascinated already by the name of it, sort of thing. So, yes.
Well, there we go. So Linden flower, that is our thoughts about it.
It is. So thank you very much for joining us for this episode. As I said, I'll be gone for a few weeks, but don't worry, we'll keep popping up at the same time each week. And Liz and friends are going to be sharing some amazing insights about some other essential oils that are gifted from Mother Earth. I'll see you in a few weeks. Liz will see you next week. Until then, take care.
Bye bye.